You want to open up these windows over there, get some light in here, even that one back there. Well, we started a new series last week called Story Time. We're going to be talking about the parables of Jesus. And so there are a bunch of them, so we're going to kind of jump around and just look at different ones and hopefully try to create some continuity through them. So today I'm going to kind of continue on a little bit with this idea of the kingdom. That's where we were last week. But to start off, I want to talk about change and transformation. Seems like transforming yourself is difficult, don't you think? So I was looking online, I found some pictures. Look at some of these transformations. Show the first picture up there. I don't forget who it is. So this is, I forget his name. Chris, what's his name? Huh? Yeah. To transform himself into the Thor. This is amazing. Now this is going from just a normal body to what Thor was. Go to the next one. That's Chris Pratt from going to Guardians of the Galaxy. That was pretty amazing. But the one that's really, really amazing is, I think, the next one. Christian Bale. That's the Machinist. And isn't that unbelievable? Like what they put themselves through. For just a regular. Do I have another one? Is that it? Just three of them? One more. Yeah, Matthew McConaughey. I don't even know what movie that is. But it's amazing how what actors will do to transform themselves, and I'm sure it takes a lot of hard work either way, whether you're trying to build your body up or you're trying to, lose just tons of weight. I don't know, have you ever been in a place in your life where, that's just a sort of a metaphor, but a place in your life where you felt stuck, where you felt like I'm here and I don't think I could ever change. Maybe it is your weight. Maybe it is your physical condition. Maybe you've tried to lose weight, you've tried to change, and it's become difficult for you. Today we're going to be looking at a parable that I think, now here's the thing about parables. Parables have many facets to them, and so the one we're going to look at today, I think we can, if we remember this idea of transformation, and remember that it can be difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think that this parable we're going to talk about speaks to that today. So to get started, now we're going to pick up a little bit where we left off last week. To get started, let's give a little bit of context. Jesus is into his ministry already. He's been going along for a while. A little bit before this, he gave the famous Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus started really in obscurity, but he started to gather a following, right? You're aware of that. People started to kind of notice who he was, and of course we just did the 7 miracles in John. So people are hearing about this, and so he develops this following of people who are, some of the people absolutely love him. And some of the people are just fascinated by him, or just interested in this thing that's going on. Right, this new thing. They're hearing these stories of people being healed and water being turned into wine. They're hearing these stories. They're wondering, who is this guy? So they're coming out to kind of see him, this kind of anomaly. Then he was being followed, believe it or not, by people who didn't like him. So this crowd is very mixed. You got it? People who loved him, people who were just kind of curious about him, and people who hated him. And so this crowd is kind of following him along everywhere he goes, and he finds himself surrounded by a huge crowd. And so he jumps in a boat, and he kind of pushes off, goes out a ways in the boat, and it's kind of a natural amphitheater where he was in the Sea of Galilee, right? It's kind of a natural amphitheater. All these crowds were out there. So he went out in the boat so he could speak to them. So let's just pick up here in Matthew 13. I'll read it to you. It says this: he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell on the path, and the birds came by and ate it up. Some fell in rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered, because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still others fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. So he ends this parable, and I think it's fairly easy. I think he thought it was maybe fairly easy as well. You have a sower, right? You have the person who's scattering the seeds. You have the seed, and you have the soil. You have all the stuff that you need. But the question is, to the people that are there, what exactly? Now, what I mean by it's clear what he was saying, not that the interpretation was clear, but the story was clear. Do you follow me? It's easy. There's a person, he's sowing seeds. They sowed seeds by throwing them out. There was the seed. They understand what seed is. They understand what soil is. And so they understood all the components of it. But they didn't get what it meant. Even the disciples didn't even get what it meant. Listen, let me continue. Matthew 13, 11 through 13, he said this, disciples came and asked him, why do you speak to the people in parables? Now, we talked a little bit about this last week. He said this. He said, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. Now, I think that's I'm going to pick up there. We talked about that last week. But this is an important paragraph here to give us some clarity in what Jesus is talking about those who have will get more. Does that ever trouble anybody? I talked last week. That always kind of troubled me. Like that doesn't sound like Jesus. Doesn't sound like Jesus would be the one to say, listen, if you're the in group, you're going to get more. But if you're out, you're out. You're way out. That doesn't sound like Jesus. That sounds like some people today, but doesn't sound like Jesus. So maybe what is he getting at? Before we do that, let's talk about some reasons why I think, and I'm not alone in this, I've done quite a bit of reading on this, but some of the reasons why Jesus spoke in parables. And I think one of the main reasons, or not just I think a lot of scholars believe this as well, that Jesus spoke in parables, is that people had to think for themselves. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing I find as a pastor, is that everybody just wants to be told. Well, you're the expert. You just tell us what it means. And no one wants to do the hard work of thinking about it and trying to understand, now, what do I do with this? Isn't that the problem with our world today? People just don't want to think for themselves. They just want to, they hear something, and I hear that, well, that's got to be true because they told me, whoever that is. And so that's got to be true. And rather than learn how to think critically. I was talking to my boys one time, and I was saying, I asked them if they ever heard the term critical thinking. Of course they did. I said, do you know what it means? And they said, well, not exactly. Yeah, sort of, but not exactly. I said, like, for example, if I have a conversation with somebody, if I have a conversation with you about a topic, and you tell me one side of the topic, and I take the other viewpoint, and we go back and forth, and we, kind of push and shove a little bit, and I give a little bit here, and you give a little bit there, right? Because I'm allowing your thoughts to, influence me a little bit. You're allowing my thoughts to influence you a little bit. You're not holding so tight to things. So you're starting to think critically, and you start to realize I may not know everything, so I need to be open to understand, right? Critical thinking. Well, how do you do that with yourself? To learn to talk to yourself, to learn to ask questions to yourself. So you think a certain way, because all of us believe that the way we think is true. Remember we talked about that last week. The things that you believe are true. And the things that you believe are true become your beliefs, and your beliefs influence how you live your life. It's pretty simple. The trouble is, if the things that you believe are true are truth, and they're not truth, they're just your truth, they're not ultimate truth, right? They're not what's called ultimate truth. If it's just your truth, and then your life is being built upon those things, it could be disastrous. So you need to learn how to think critically. You need to learn how to question those things. Now, I don't know about you, But growing up, questioning wasn't something that we, especially in church, that we were allowed to do, right? Anybody else? Yeah, you weren't in, let's put it this way. Maybe they didn't even say don't do it, but you were never encouraged to do it for sure. You're never encouraged to think for yourself. You were told to. Now, that doesn't mean that just because you're thinking for yourself doesn't mean that the other person's wrong. Are you with me? It doesn't mean they're wrong because you're thinking for yourself. But I'm not going to. So when I have conversations with people, we just did this podcast this past week, and I had my friend Steve there. I was talking about one of the things that I do, and I don't do it very well, is I have a tendency to question somebody's beliefs, whether I believe them or not, whether I have the same belief as them or not. I question them to see how deep their belief is, if it's something they've just been given. Now, the trouble with that is that a lot of people don't have enough backing to what they believe, and so then I'm pushing them, and they start to backpedal a little bit because they don't have answers, and that gets me kind of going a little bit more, which I admit it's wrong, right? And then I end up backing them up to a corner. When someone's backed into a corner, they come out fighting, and so then nothing's going to be resolved. So that I do it bad a lot of times. But the fact remains that we should question everything, because it doesn't matter. Because if it's true, if it's real reality, it's going to stand no matter what questions you ask. And so it's a hard thing for us to do that. And so I think these parables, what Jesus is getting at is Jesus wants people to think for themselves. I think he wants you to take ownership over your life, ownership over your beliefs, and ownership over the way that you live your life. And we're going to see that maybe here in this parable already. I showed last week about the man who was pouring the tea into the cup, and the student said, it's full. And he said, that's your problem. Your problem is you're already too full. You already know too much. And we'll see how that's true in this parable that we're going to look at today. So that's the first reason, I think, or maybe one of the reasons that Jesus spoke in parables. I think another reason he spoke in parables is that Jesus was buying time. He was buying time for himself because he knew his destiny was to die on a cross. So he's buying time for it, right? And so he's teaching in parables because he needs time, he needs things to develop. What needs to take place? Well, they're not just going to go out and just crucify anybody. They're not just going to take Jesus, well, hey, how about this guy? Let's crucify him. No, he had to take some time. Number one, someone had to want to kill him. Isn't that true? Someone had to want to kill him. And so you have this rabbi that's come along and he's teaching, and everybody's fine with that. But it was the things that he was teaching and the things that he was saying about himself. See, that's what you have to understand. Why they came along and killed him. It wasn't because he was a better teacher than other people. It wasn't because he was speaking in parables. It wasn't because it was a mystery. It was because of things he was saying about himself, about who he was. And because he was saying those things, so you have to remember, the Israelites, the Jewish community then, were looking for a Messiah to come along, but a different kind of Messiah than what Jesus was. We've talked about it many, many times. They were looking for a strong arm. They were looking for a political leader, a military leader to set them free from oppression that they've been in for decades and centuries. And they were going to finally have the upper hand. And so that's what they thought. And so when they realized, when people started to see that wasn't it, some still thought that, but when he was calling himself a king, the Jewish leaders didn't like that. They hated that because they were the leaders. And the Romans also had good reason to kill him because he's talking about being a king. So he also needed to, a third thing is this, he needed to gather followers, didn't he? He needed to have followers. He needed to teach them because when he died, what did he need? He needed people to carry on his teaching about him and the kingdom. So I think all of these reasons, and probably more, but these are some reasons why Jesus was teaching in parables. And he talks about in here, he talks about, he's teaching the secrets of the kingdom. Now, we think the secrets of the kingdom, secrets are being something that, and that kind of, does that ever trouble you too? Secrets of the kingdom is kind of like, well, why is it a secret? But it wasn't secret in that sense, it was being hidden. Secret comes from the Greek word mysterion. That makes a little more sense, doesn't it? It's a mystery. The kingdom's sort of a mystery, not a secret, but a mystery. It takes some work to understand it, to understand what is going on. So a mystery or a religious secret, and it's understood by the initiated, right? By those who have. We talked about these two words last week, how beautiful these two words. Those who have repented, who have said, listen, I need to start thinking differently, and have believed, the initiated. And so the mystery is being revealed to those. Their eyes are being opened. That's why I keep saying, those that have eyes to see, let them see. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Okay, so let's move on to what he talks about the meaning of this parable to be. He says this, listen to what the parable of the sower means. Now you are already privy to this, so you already know. So you're thinking, well, this wasn't hard. But remember, in the day, they didn't have the Bible. They didn't read it before. They didn't read that interpretation right with it. So he said, listen, this is what the parable of the sower means. Anyone who hears the message about the kingdom, again, it's about the kingdom, and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in their hearts. This is the seed sown along the path. And we're going to break these down. We're going to talk about the four soils. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 160, 30 times what was sown. So Jesus is revealing the meaning here. And the meaning, of course, and this is important to get, the meaning is the response to the message. What message? What message? The kingdom. This is the response to the message of the kingdom, and the kingdom is coming. So he's telling them there are four responses. Let's break these down. Let's talk about these. The first one is this, is a well-worn path. Have you ever been in the woods and you've been walking along and you see you're out in the woods, just not nowhere, and you see a path that's well-worn. It's a game trail. And the animals follow along that path. Do you see any weeds growing along that path? No, you don't. Because it's so well worn. Now, this is an important concept to keep holding your mind for a little bit later. It's so well worn that nothing grows on it. No matter what gets put on it, nothing will grow. So think of it in terms of this. We've talked many times, we have a neural network in our brains. You have pathways in your brains. And those pathways, depending on how often they're rehearsed, they get more and more well-worn. So it's a great analogy, the path for our minds as well. We have a well-worn neural network. And so what he's talking about here is this. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to, and probably rightly so, you're going to start to imagine for yourself, well, where am I in this? And you should do that. You should do that. Be honest with yourself. Who are the people that would represent this soil? Well, in the day, they were the Pharisees. We have Pharisees today. Pharisees are people who they know exactly what they believe. One of their favorite questions is this. One of their favorite questions is, well, why do you believe that? Why is that? We believe this. What do you believe? These are Pharisees. They have a well-worn path. And so when something comes along, like in the day, when Jesus starts talking about the kingdom, now they love their system. They love the way they had it set up. They were in control. They ran everything. They controlled everybody. They liked that system. Oftentimes today, people have a system that they like. They have a way in which they live. They have a way in which they've figured out God, and it works for them, and they like that. And so when they hear something comes along and it upsets that, that's this path. That's this well-worn path. Now, what's amazing to me, how this correlates to our thinking process. So a lot of times I have said some things to challenge people to think a different way. And the trouble is this: for 20, 30, 35, 40 years they've thought one way. Not necessarily the right way. It's the truth to them because they've believed it for 30, 35 years because they heard it a long time ago and they received it and they accepted it and they believed it for a while and they believed it for a couple months, a couple years. And then even if they were challenged, who wants to admit that they've been believing something that's not true? No one wants to admit that. So what we do is we stand and we argue and we defend the things that we believe. And that's what this soil represents. And the more you think, so last week we talked about this, the more you think about a certain thing, the more you think on it, the more it becomes truth to you, it becomes your belief system, and then you live your life out according to that belief system. That's what you do. And that's this path, right there. This is the path of the Pharisee. They like their path, it served them well, and they want to stay with it. And so the message of the kingdom falls on this kind of soil, this kind of person, with this sort of neural network. And it doesn't even take root. It can't. It absolutely can't. The second one then is rocky soil. Rocky soil is soil that's just off the path. And it's all rock, but there's a layer of soil on top of it, right? But underneath is maybe some hard rock. And so that top layer of soil gathers some moisture, and it's great, isn't it? It's great for planting some seed in there. It takes root real quick and grows up. But once the sun comes out, it evaporates all the soil that's in that, all the water that's in that little layer of soil. Everybody knows that a plant has to have deep roots to go down and find water. And so the rocks stop it from growing deep. And so the sun comes out and it dries up all that moisture, and quickly the roots can't grow deep. And so the plants can't live without water, and so they quickly die. See, these are the people that they're in the crowds and they're just curious. They're just curious about the new thing. There are people like that today. There are people like that. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I don't remember what year it was. I was in Bible college and there was they call it the Brownsville Revival. Anybody remember that? It was in Florida. Anybody? Marty, you remember that? Yeah, it's called the Brownsville Revival. And it was a small church of less than 100 people. And people were coming from all over the country to go there. Why? It was a new thing. It was a new thing. People love this new and interesting thing. And they go and they're all about it and everything. And they get swept up in it and everything. And then they go away and it quickly just kind of fizzles out. Because there was no depth in it whatsoever. It was all sort of just kind of show. And there are people like that today as well. They bounce around from church to church to church to church to church, never sinking any roots deep anywhere. Because let's face it, roots give the connotation of permanence. Like I'm stuck here, right? I mean, you want it, but that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing to put your roots deep, to keep uprooting yourself and somewhere else, uprooting yourself and somewhere else, uprooting yourself and somewhere else. I tell you what, I think the American church is marked by that more than anything else. In Africa, when there's churches that are 20 miles apart or more, but unlike here, a 20 church. Well, we have a church, probably 50 yards away, right? But in Africa, and people walk 20 miles to go to church, right? You're not. If you got on the bad side of your church, you were in trouble, because to find another church, maybe you may have to walk 50 miles, 100 miles. And so you got to a church and you put your roots down. You let your roots grow deep. And so he's talking about, listen, there are those in the crowd right now that identify with this soil. And they knew it. They knew it themselves. They're just there. They're interested in this guy. Maybe let's go see what he can do for us. Maybe he can do something for us. We heard he's done things at weddings. We've heard of healed people. Who knows? Maybe we'll get something from him. And that's some people today. They're looking for what they can get. They go this way. I heard that church is doing something, and going here and going there. And they're just in it for what they can get from Jesus. They weren't in it for love, that's for sure. Then there are the thorns. These people, I think, genuinely like Jesus. I think they do. But the problem here is that what he has to say with them in this context is what they've built their life on. It gives an example in another story about a rich young ruler. And so this ruler comes to him, and he has a lot of money, a lot of possessions, and he says, what do I need to do to basically inherit the kingdom, to follow you? And so Jesus, knowing him, so that's simple. He said, sell all of your possessions, give it to the poor, and follow me. That's all you got to do. And said he walked away, and he was troubled in his heart. Because why? Because he had a lot of possessions. Now, of course, I think you already know this. Jesus wasn't saying that the possessions are the problem. You having possessions is not the problem. What's the problem? Your possessions having you. That's the problem. So anything in your life that you, here's the thing, this is easy to understand, and it's easy to see maybe in other people. It's the most difficult thing to know in yourself. What have I put before Jesus? What do I put before him? And so that's what he's saying. There are these things, and he knows the difficulty with wealth. He knows that. He said, listen, these things are going to come along, and you may really desire to follow Jesus. But there are things that are coming along that's going to just choke that right out. As much as you desire it, these other things are so much more important to you. And so these weeds, these thorns as he calls them, they choke out the good news of what? The kingdom. The kingdom. Because why? Because there's simply other things that seem like better news than the news of the kingdom of God. These things, boy, I just really like these things. These are, I can't do without these. What would that be for you? It's a good question to ask. What would that be? What would you not give up to follow Jesus if you were asked? What would it be for you? Then, of course, there's the good soil. The seed gets planted, it takes root, it grows, the soil is healthy, right? You know what healthy soil is. And so there's the plant takes root, the roots grow deep, it's getting its water, and so the plant continues to grow. It takes time, but it grows, it matures, and as it matures, it bears fruit. So the question we ask is, where do I fall? Like, where am I? What is my soil? Now, the title of this message is I think probably the most important thing I can tell you in this whole message, and that's this. Where you are right now, where you are in life, where you are, is not who you are. So this is describing of people of where they might be. But it's not who you are. The same as transforming. Maybe you've tried to transform your a personality trait or whatever. Maybe you get your anger or something. That's just where you are in life. Hopefully, you're going to keep progressing on. We did some podcasts about talking about the Bible and its teachings, how they're not a fixed. Most of them aren't a fixed place in time. Okay. In other words, we read the words on the page and we understand it, but we know it's not a fixed thing in time. Like, for example, it talks about how to treat your slave. Well, we don't have slaves, right? And so it's talking about how to treat slaves because it's a moment in time for those people, but there's an ethic involved in this. And so we talked about this last week. So slavery in the Old Testament was pretty bad. And so as we're moving forward, God starts talking about how he wants the Israelites to treat slaves. Does that mean God is for slavery? Doesn't mean God's for slavery. What he's saying is, this is where the culture is. But listen, you're going to behave differently within the culture. You're going to treat slaves differently. You're going to treat them a lot better. Because what is God trying to do? God's trying to move them like he's trying to do you, like he's trying to do me, because where you are is not who you are. He's trying to move you from where you are to where he wants you to be. He doesn't take you from here all the way over there in one step, does he? He takes you from treating slaves really bad and to treating them a little bit better. And then maybe a little bit better after that. And then treating them actually good. And then starting to realize that maybe slavery isn't even the right thing. Maybe we should be abolitionists. You follow me? And so the ultimate ethic oftentimes isn't found on the pages of Scripture. And that's okay. God's ultimate ethic, because he's constantly moving us along. In the Bible, he's doing that. But it's important to remember because he's doing the same thing for you and I today. He's moving us along incrementally in our journey. So where you are right now, currently, is not who you are. God sees what it is, who it is that you can be. And so, it's okay to ask, where am I? But transformation can still take place. So let me just pick up real quick here from last week before I go on with the rest of the notes. Our thoughts, as we think them over and over again, wherever those thoughts are about ourselves, about where we are, if we think them over and over again, we assign truth to them. As you think about it more and more and more and more and more, you assign truth. And those truths become beliefs, and beliefs create the understanding, the cognitive lens through which you interpret everything that you see, the events of your life. And then we talked about this last week, then you sift your environment to find things that validate those truths, those beliefs, those thoughts that you started out having. And so that's the way it works. So we talked a little bit about that, about how, you might, someone might make a comment about you and you start dwelling on that and you start looking for other things that validate that. And so it's also why we're so convinced that your view of the world is your truth. That's why, because you've created that. What most people don't realize is that this is so important to at least just hear it, understand it, and grasp it. And then think about it after time, ruminate on it to try to reveal its importance in your life. And that's this, that you have participated in creating your own version of truth. You've participated in it. It's not that you have just been outside and go, well, that's, I see that's truth and you accept. No, you've participated in this process of creating truth. And that's in large part these Pharisees. And then we've developed, and this is important. This is important with this idea of transformation and change. Your self-concept is made up of I am beliefs. I am statements or I am beliefs. We all have them about who you are presently. I am strong. I am smart. I am dumb. I am, lazy. I am, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you have, your personal narrative that you tell yourself over and over and over again. I tell my boys, I tell you guys all the time, your self-talk is so important. Be careful of that. Don't be flippant about your self-talk. And then we have these I can beliefs or I can statements of what I am capable of, or maybe I can't, what I'm not capable of in the future. And from these I am and I can statements, you create the stories and narratives about who you are. About who you are. By the I am statements that you tell yourself, by the I can or I can't statements of who you are. I'm just a Pharisee. Always have been, always will be. And we tell ourselves these things. You might tell yourself, I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable. I can't do this. It's just easy to tell yourself something else, like I am smart, I am open-minded. I am or I can be or I will be a hard worker. I can achieve my goals. What are the things that you tell yourselves? See, you're the main character in your story. And you're writing the script of your story based on your self-concept. So I think in here, I think that Jesus is talking about these things in such a way to make us realize that there's something that maybe we need to do. And that's this. Okay, so I am number one, soil. Number two, soil. Number three, soil. That's fine. The question I need to ask is this. Can I change my soil? The answer, of course, is yes, you can change your soil. And so how do I begin to change my soil? Because that's me. That's the I am. That's the I can. That's who I am. And so I'm not bound all the time to be the hard path. Well, that's just the way I am. I'm that way. No, you're not that way. Stop telling yourself you're that way. And so there are three simple things that you can do. And I don't say these things lightly, especially I don't say the first thing lightly because I'm going to say it and you're going to go, oh yeah, of course. Don't take it like that. The first thing is this. There are three P's to prepare the soil of my heart. The first thing, friends, is prayer. It's prayer. Now, as soon as I said that word, you have an idea, you have a thought about what that is, what it's not, whether you can do it, whether you can't do it, what it means, what it doesn't mean, or you don't know what it is, or you can't do it, and you're automatic go back to sometime you were in a Bible study, and your whole fear was that at the end or the beginning of Bible study, someone's going to say, would you open in prayer? And that was your fear. That's why maybe you didn't even go, because I didn't know what prayer is, I didn't know how to pray. Now, all these concepts of what it is, what it's not, all this confusion. Let me tell you something about prayer. Number one, God doesn't need your prayer. God doesn't need it. God is full, contained. He's complete. He doesn't need anything from us. God doesn't even need us to acknowledge Him. God desires us to. Doesn't need us to. See, prayer is for us. Isn't it interesting to you that the 12-step program that was designed, right? Now, the 12-step program was not designed for sobriety. You should know that right off the bat. It wasn't designed for sobriety. The 12-step program was designed for a spiritual awakening. That's what it was designed for. And the byproduct or an outcome of spiritual awakening, guess what it is? Sobriety. It's not, don't go into it going, I need to quit drinking or quit doing this or whatever, so I'll go through these 12 steps because that's the outcome. No, it's not the outcome. It's a byproduct of the outcome. The outcome is that we have a spiritual awakening. So the first thing is this. The first thing is that, and that's what prayer is. Prayer is the very first step. I acknowledge there is something other than me. That's the first step. A higher power, that there is God. And that's what prayer is. Prayer is saying, when you kneel down, sit down, lay down, whatever it is that you do, driving in your car, and you cry out, you say, oh God, the first thing you're doing is saying, there is something more powerful or something bigger than me. And so we begin there. And we begin honestly, and we say, God, man, I believe you exist, right? And I need to start changing the way I've been doing things. I need to start changing the way I think. Repentance. And we believe. And then your prayer starts to get even deeper for you. God, there's all these things in my life. Where do I even begin? Like, how do I do this? And you start to just talk to God, and that's prayer. And that's the first step in preparing your heart, preparing your soil. You start to talk to God as honestly as you can. I gave my utmost for his highest out to a couple of my friends, and one of my friends said to me, I was reading, I said, apparently I'm supposed to find a closet to go pray in. And I laughed and I go, yeah. I said, what do you think, you think it really means closet? What do you think that means? Well, get away. Yeah, get away from what? Well, I don't know, get away from everybody. Yeah, why? Well, just to be alone. Well, I mean, but why? Because of distractions. How many of you start praying and within short order your thoughts are going berserk? They're all over the place, right? See, that's why the practice of, there's so many things that is intertwined. That's why the practice of meditation is so good. Meditation helps you control that gray matter between your ears. That's what meditation does. So you focus on one thing, you see your mind wandering, and you notice your mind wandering, and you say, oh, my mind just wandered. And you don't beat yourself up over it, because that's what minds do. And you bring it back, and you keep doing that, and you do it 10 times, you do it 100 times, you do it 10,000 times, until you're able to. Who's you? Isn't that funny? I thought I'm my thoughts. Until you're able to control your thoughts. Until you're able to control well, who are you? Well, your spirit. You want to be led by your spirit, not by your physical brain. Your thoughts are wandering, so your spirit, keeps bringing them back. Keeps bringing it back into check. That's not what we're doing. Brain, that's not what you're doing. You're here to think about this, your breath. That's all you're here to think about. That's your task. I want to think about, no, that's your task. Just that. Think about that. And you learn to control it. And so that's what this is about. That prayer is part of that. The second thing is this. The second P, unfortunately, is pain. I know you don't like that, because I don't really, I don't like that myself. But the Bible says this. Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when trouble comes. Don't let it overwhelm you. Trouble's going to come. Jesus said that. I'm telling you that too. If you haven't already discovered it, if you live the perfect life up to this point, you're going to experience trouble. You're going to experience pain. But why do we think pain is a bad thing? Think of do you know how a farmer will have clear out fields, and he'll leave one tree, usually an oak tree, in the middle of a field. And that oak tree in the middle of the field, as it's growing, number one, when it's a small plant, it needs the wind to beat against it. It needs the wind to beat against it. If there's no wind to beat against it, if you grow a plant inside and it grows, it never faces it. When you put it outside, first wind's going to come, it's going to push it right over, it's going to be done. So as it's growing, it needs wind to push against it. What happens is the roots start to grow down deep, starts to get stronger and stronger, like the tree. Tree's the same way. And the tree starts growing, starts bigger, and then storms come. High, gusty winds, right? And the farmer keeps that tree out there, and it grows to be big and strong, a big, tall oak. Guess what that farmer uses that tree for? Cuts off the branches, and he uses it for his handles on all his implements. You know why? It's the hardest wood he could find, because it's faced the storms, and it made it strong. And so the things that we face in life, the troubles in life, it's all in how the perspective that you have on it. Oh, this is good. This is going to kill me. No, it's not going to kill you. It's going to make you stronger. So this is really interesting. Do me a favor. Everybody go like this. To this. Everybody do it. Everybody. Let me see your hands. Okay. Your right hand, put your thumb up. Left hand, put your finger out. Okay. Now here's what I want you to do. I want you to switch. Switch back. Switch back. Back, fast. Keep fast. Let me tell you, you know what you were just doing? You're doing an amazing thing right now. you started a brand new neural network in your brain. Brand new. Never been there before. That's why you couldn't do it. That's why you were going like this, and fingers are going all over the place. And you stop one time, and you go, wait a minute, that's not supposed to, how is it supposed to, right? Because you have no neural network for it. And so the beauty is this, the beauty is that you can develop, you can change your soil through pain. And listen, when what's happening is I don't know exactly what words to use, but it's kind of agitating or difficult, isn't it? Establish a new neural network. But you know what that's called? Accelerated learning. When you're experiencing that, it's actually accelerated learning. That's exciting to me. And so you start slow, and it seems difficult, but you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And that leads to number 3, and that's perseverance. That you just keep on keeping on. James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete and not lacking anything. I'm excited about these parables. I don't know about you, but I hope that today you learned a little bit about just because you are at some place right now doesn't mean that's who you are. That's who you are. There's plenty of time, there's plenty of room to change. And it's possible. Let's stand. Father, we're so thankful that we have, like always, these parables preserved for us on the pages of our Bible that we can go to, that we can look, that we can dig into, that we can learn from, that we can change, we can transform ourselves. Because like we always say, the Bible is not for information, it's for transformation. So God, we're thankful for that. Now we pray for our meal today, as we're going to get together and have good fellowship together and practice communion together today. God, that it would just be a blessed time, and we'll just enjoy one another's company as we remember you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Michelle's got an announcement.
Before we get started this morning, I just wanted to give a little bit of instruction. We have everything set up and ready